At 0630 hours at Little Rock Air Force Base, a ground crew is rolling collapsible rubber bladders into the cargo bay of this C-17 Globemaster III. In 3 hours, they'll strap themselves next to those bladders filled with 6,000 gallons of JP-8 jet fuel headed straight into a war zone. One spark, one leak, and you'd expect a fireball at altitude. Except, you'd be wrong. And the reason why reveals one of the most insane logistics operations the Air Force has ever designed. The 19th Logistics Readiness Squadron rolls the first bladder into position. These are fuel specialists, logistics troops, technically, but every one of them holds a SEER card, which stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape, the same wilderness course that fighter pilots and special operators attend. They've got night vision goggle certifications, aircraft egress training, and weapons quals, because in 3 hours, they'll be riding in the back of this aircraft with 20 tons of jet fuel, and wherever they're landing, they're not welcome. Right now, there's exactly one unit in the entire Air Force that can do this job. One. Every other set of Agile Bulk Fuel Delivery System, or ABFDS, bladders got pulled from service after a defect grounded the fleet worldwide. The Air Force won't say exactly what failed. They will say every bladder in the inventory got pulled until a new design cleared testing. Little Rock got the first operational set of the new generation. The only other bladders in existence sit at the schoolhouse for training purposes. The world's most powerful Air Force, 5,200 aircraft, bases on every continent, and only one unit in Arkansas can turn a cargo plane into a tanker. Let that sink in for a minute. If these bladders fail, if this unit gets redeployed, if one bad batch of rubber compound shuts down production again, the entire concept of agile fuel delivery for the United States Air Force goes dark. No backup, no redundancy, just a gap in the most fuel-dependent military on Earth. But before a single gallon of that fuel touches a bladder, it has to survive the most paranoid quality control system in the American military. At the fuel farm, an R-11 fuel truck rolls out past rows of bulk storage tanks at dawn, the driver checking mirrors through an overcast morning, diesel engine humming under a gray sky. Behind him, hundreds of thousands of gallons of JP-8 sit in bulk storage. Every gallon in those tanks arrived by pipeline, rail car, or a tanker ship, and every gallon has to be tested before it moves another inch. Inside a fuel laboratory that looks more like a university chemistry department than anything you'd find on a military base, technicians in blue nitro gloves run every batch through a gauntlet that would make a pharmaceutical company nervous. They pour fuel samples into stainless steel receptacles, watching for water separation, because water in jet fuel freezes at altitude, and ice crystals in a fuel line will flame out an engine faster than running the tank dry. They check for particle contamination, microscopic debris invisible to the naked eye that can score a turbine blade and turn a $30 million engine into scrap metal. Think of it like finding a grain of sand in a swimming pool, except that grain of sand destroys everything it touches. Every result gets logged. Every batch that fails gets quarantined. The fuel that passes flows through filter separators the size of a refrigerator, each one rated to catch contaminants down to a single micron. At the dispatch center, an airman confirms the next delivery window over a handheld radio. Every gallon tracked from storage tank to aircraft wing. By the time JP-8 reaches those bladders on the cargo floor of a C-17, it's been tested, filtered, metered, and documented more thoroughly than most pharmaceuticals. It's easier to get a kidney through customs than a gallon of jet fuel past Air Force quality control, because the chemistry that makes it safe to fly also makes it unforgiving if contaminated. One bad batch grounds a squadron. The fuel loaded onto the C-17 at Little Rock this morning passed every test. The loading crew works methodically. Every connection point gets checked twice. Every strap gets tensioned to spec, and that spec matters more than it would on any other cargo load. The bladders shift during flight. Turbulence pushes fuel inside them like water in a bathtub, and that sloshing weight transfers directly into the airframe. 6,000 gallons moving laterally inside a cargo bay at 30,000 feet changes the aircraft's center of gravity in real time. A strap that's too loose lets the bladder move. A connection that's not seated leaks fuel into a pressurized cargo bay. Nobody rushes this part. They have 90 minutes. 90 minutes to load, connect, pressure test, and secure 6,000 gallons of jet fuel before the mission window closes. One misconnection means they start over. Two misconnections and the mission scrubs. The pumping system that will push all of it out on the other end runs on 2 diesel engines. Not electric, diesel. Inside an airplane, full of fuel, which sounds exactly as insane as bringing a campfire to a fireworks factory. If a safety inspector saw this, he'd have a heart attack before he could finish writing the violation. But interestingly enough, diesel engines eliminate the spark risk that electric motors carry. No brushes arcing, which means no ignition source near fuel vapor. The entire design philosophy is the same one that governs everything about this system. Make the dangerous thing as hard to ignite as physically possible. And that philosophy starts with the fuel staff. Jet Propellant 8, or for short JP8, has a flash point of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside a cargo bay at cruise altitude, the temperature is nowhere close. You could drop a lit match into a puddle of it and the match will go out. JP8 is made deliberately hard to ignite. The liquid is safe. The vapor isn't. At the right concentration inside an enclosed space, JP8 vapor ignites, and you don't get a warning before it happens. That's why a degassing network runs the entire length of the cargo bay, connected directly to the aircraft's pressurization system, scrubbing vapor in real time for every second of the flight. The system doesn't shut off. It doesn't cycle. As long as there is fuel in those bladders, it's working. The crew in the back lives in a different world from the cockpit. The cargo bay smells like JP8, even with the degassing system running. That smell gets into everything. Flight suits, skin, hair. They'll be back here for up to 8 hours. 8 hours, sitting 3 feet from 20 tons of jet fuel, feeling every pocket of turbulence, knowing that the degassing system between them and an explosive atmosphere is a single mechanical failure away from a very, very bad day. The airmen monitor bladder pressure, check the strap tension, and watch for any sign of a leak. A wet spot on the cargo floor at 30,000 feet is not something you note in a logbook and check after landing. It's something you deal with immediately, because the margin between a manageable situation and an unmanageable one narrows fast when fuel is involved. The fuel contains trace amounts of benzene. Long-term exposure causes nerve damage, so the protocols are specific and non-negotiable. You don't eat, drink, or smoke until you've scrubbed it off. Gloves stay on. Skin exposure gets logged. These are the people who live with this fuel professionally, who know its chemistry the way a medic knows pharmaceuticals. But JP8 isn't just feeding jets. Under NATO's single fuel concept adopted in 1986, JP8 replaced diesel across the entire military. The M1 Abrams tank, heaviest ground vehicle in the American arsenal, runs on JP8. Armored trucks run on it. The generators keeping a forward base powered through the night, JP8. The field stove cooking breakfast, JP8. When those bladders land, they're not refueling one aircraft. They're powering everything on the ground. Every vehicle, every generator, every hot meal. Which means when it doesn't arrive, a base goes dark. And getting it there by ground used to be one of the most dangerous jobs in the war. Long columns of tanker trucks crawling along predictable routes through valleys the enemy owned. They knew what those trucks carried. They knew without fuel, fighters don't fly, tanks don't move, and bases go dark. Those convoys were hit constantly. Between 2003 and 2007, fuel and water convoys in Afghanistan accounted for roughly 1 casualty every 24 missions. The drivers knew the odds before they climbed into the cab. Some of them ran those routes every day for a 12-month tour. The Pentagon, in its infinite talent for understatement, calls the delivered price the fully burdened cost of fuel. A gallon of JP8 costs $3 at a refinery. By the time it reaches a remote forward operating base by ground convoy, after the armed escorts, the helicopter cover, the route clearance teams sweeping for IEDs, and the casualties, that $3 gallon costs somewhere between $45 and $400. It's a clean number for a cost paid in American lives. That's the equation the ABFDS erases. No convoy, no roads, no IEDs, one flight. And the airmen from the 19th are riding with their fuel right now, 3 feet from those bladders, for every minute of it. But they're not the only single point of failure. Other aircraft in the U.S. inventory can carry this much weight. The C-5 Galaxy hauls more than twice the payload, but it needs 7,000 feet of paved runway and a ground crew to receive it. A C-130 doesn't need a long runway, but the cargo bay is too small for the ABFDS package. The C-17 can do both, and right now, that logistics chain is descending toward a strip that doesn't have a control tower, a fuel depot, or a paved surface. The kind of strip most commercial pilots would attempt in a Cessna. But what the crew doesn't know yet is that conditions on the ground have changed. The surface that was graded last week has been chewed up by a convoy of armored vehicles passing through, and the wind is gusting at 35 knots, right at the crosswind limit for a loaded C-17. The pilots will find out when they break through the clouds. The approach looks like a commercial landing, a steep, tactical descent designed to minimize time spent at low altitude where the aircraft is vulnerable. The pilots line up on a strip they may be seeing for the first time. The C-17 touches down. The ramp drops. The fuels team is already moving. From this moment, the clock is running. The fuels team has roughly 30 minutes to pump 6,000 gallons before the C-17's own fuel reserves burn past the point of no return. Every minute on the ground is a minute of JP-8 the engines are drinking that nobody is putting back. The tanker orbiting 200 miles north won't wait forever. The first step is grounding. The aircraft has built up static electricity in flight, thousands of volts looking for a path to discharge. One spark near fuel vapor and the math changes instantly. A grounding cable gets clamped to bare metal on the landing gear before anyone touches a fuel connection. Then the hoses unspool. Delivery nozzles connect, the diesel pumps fire up. 400 liters per minute flowing into ground bladders before the dust from landing is settled. The noise from the diesel pumps competes with the C-17's engine, still running at idle behind them. Hand signals, deliberate movement, every connection checked before the fuel flows. The JP-8 pours into collapsible ground storage bladders. Same technology, just lying flat on the ground instead of riding inside an aircraft. From those ground bladders, hoses run to fuel trucks, parked aircraft, or portable filling stations. What they're building here is called a Forward Arming and Refueling Point, or FARP, a temporary, secure facility established close to combat areas, essentially a gas station with guns and no snacks. As each bladder empties inside the aircraft, it deflates, collapsing in on itself like a pool float losing air. Empty space fills with vapor. If that concentration climbs, you've got an explosive atmosphere developing inside the cargo bay of a running aircraft. The degassing system earns its keep here, removing vapor as fast as the pumps push fuel out, bladder by bladder, keeping concentrations below the threshold the entire time. Both systems running simultaneously. Neither one tolerates a failure. The moment those bladders are empty, they fold flat onto the cargo floor. The whole system palletizes back up in minutes. 30 minutes ago, this strip was nothing. Now, there's 6,000 gallons of JP-8 on the ground, enough to launch a dozen fighter sorties, fuel an armored convoy, and keep the generators running for days. But the C-17 has a problem, and it's not the kind of problem you can troubleshoot at altitude. 4 Pratt & Whitney turbofans drink roughly 20,000 pounds of fuel per hour. The aircraft has been burning through its own reserves since Little Rock, climbing, cruising, idling on a dirt strip while the pumps ran. The nearest friendly runway is 2,000 miles of open ocean away, and that C-17 just gave away 20 tons of fuel. The ramp closes. Thrust reversers put the aircraft in reverse on the runway it just landed on. No taxiway required. The pilots drive it backward like a pickup truck in a Costco parking lot, except there's nobody outside to wave them through. A truck weighs 250,000 pounds, and one wrong input puts a wingtip into terrain that costs more to fix than most people's houses. The aircraft takes off from the same 3,500 feet of dirt it landed on. The fuels team stays behind with 6,000 gallons and a perimeter to secure. The Air Force calls this Agile combat employment, island hopping across the Pacific, building fuel points on strips that don't appear on any commercial map, within range of enemy missiles targeting the major bases everyone already knows about. Land, pump, disappear. That's what Agile means. But disappearing requires getting home, and right now, the C-17 doesn't have enough fuel to do that. The aircraft commander does the math one more time. The numbers haven't changed. They have enough fuel for approximately 45 minutes of flight time before the situation becomes what the Air Force politely calls minimum fuel, and what pilots privately call sweating. Somewhere at 25,000 feet, a KC-135 Stratotanker is already circling in the track, waiting. The KC-135 has been doing this since Eisenhower was president. Built by Boeing on the same bones as the 707, stuffed with fuel tanks instead of passengers. Over 200,000 pounds of transferable fuel. Some of the airframes still flying are pushing 70 years old. At the tail of the aircraft, a boom operator lies face down in a windowed pod, staring at the C-17 climbing up from below. From that position, on their stomach, at altitude, in turbulence, they manually fly a rigid telescoping boom into a receptacle on the receiving aircraft. Both planes moving at 300 miles per hour with a closing speed measured in inches per second. Too fast and the boom strikes the fuselage. Too slow and they fall out of the contact envelope. 765 people in the entire Air Force are qualified to do this. That's fewer than a single Army infantry battalion. The C-17 slides into position below and behind the tanker. The pilots hold formation, speed, altitude, and lateral position locked within tolerances tight enough that a sneeze on the yoke would ruin the day for everyone. The boom operator talks them in. The boom connects. Fuel flows at roughly 1,000 gallons per minute. The C-17 that just pumped 6,000 gallons onto a dirt strip is now drinking from a tanker at 25,000 feet. The same JP-8, the same fuel chain, just moving in the other direction. The tanks fill, the boom retracts, the C-17 drops away, banks south, and points its nose toward home. 2,000 miles of open ocean ahead and enough fuel to get there. Back at the base, the fuel that just arrived gets metered, tested, and distributed. The aerial refueling community has an unofficial motto. You'll find it on squadron patches, challenge coins, stickers in crew rooms from Cadena to Ramstein. Nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. And that same JP-8 fueling all of this? It also powers the most protected aircraft on Earth. Click here to find out more. Bye for now.